Will iPhones ever be made in America? Here's why it's not that simple. President Trump has made it clear. One of his top goals is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And yes, that includes iPhones. But how realistic is that idea? White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt recently pointed to Apple's $500 billion investment plan through 2028 as a sign that change could be on the horizon. But experts aren't so sure. Could the iPhone really become made in the USA? And if so, at what cost? President Trump has been consistent about one thing. He wants to see Made in America labels return, especially on high-profile products like the iPhone. For many Americans, that idea hits a patriotic nerve. After all, why shouldn't one of the world's most iconic devices be built right here at home? Trump sees revitalizing U.S. manufacturing as a key part of his broader economic plan. It's not just about job creation. It's about reclaiming control over vital industries, boosting national pride, and reducing dependency on foreign countries, especially China. Sound like a good idea? Many folks think so, but others are asking, is it realistic? Earlier this year, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt pointed to Apple's announcement of a massive $500 billion investment in the U.S. economy by 2028. That's a serious commitment. She framed it as a sign that Apple may be warming up to the idea of shifting more of its operations, maybe even iPhone production, onto American soil. But not so fast. Industry experts say moving iPhone manufacturing from China to the US is no small feat. It's not just about building a factory and flipping a switch. It's about recreating an incredibly complex, finely tuned supply chain that's been perfected over 3 decades. So, could we one day see iPhones rolling off American assembly lines? It's possible, but not without major hurdles. And perhaps the biggest question of all, how much would it cost you, the consumer? Stay with us as we dive deeper into what it would take and what it would cost to bring your next iPhone home. Could an American-made iPhone cost you 3 times more? Imagine paying over $3,000 for a new iPhone. Sounds crazy, right? That's the estimate from Dan Ives, a tech analyst at Wedbush Securities. He told the Associated Press that building iPhones in the US could more than triple the cost compared to production in China. The price jump would be so extreme it's hard to even wrap your head around it, Ives said. It's simply not practical. And he's not alone. According to analysts at Bank of America, US production could increase the cost by around 90%, and that's a conservative figure. So, why the dramatic price hike? Imagine walking into a store, looking at the newest iPhone, and seeing a $3,000 price tag staring back at you. That's not a typo. It's a real estimate from Dan Ives, a respected tech analyst at Wedbush Securities. According to him, if iPhones were manufactured in the US instead of China, the cost could more than triple. Prices would skyrocket so dramatically that it's tough to even grasp, I've said. It's just not a practical move. And he's not the only one sounding the alarm. Analysts at Bank of America say that even in a best-case scenario, American-made iPhones would cost at least 90% more, and that's being generous. So what's driving that jaw-dropping price jump? Let's break it down. Labor costs, the American price tag. First off, American workers get paid a lot more than their counterparts in China. But in manufacturing, that pay difference adds up fast. Just labor alone could boost production costs by about 25%, according to Bank of America. Now, think about how intricate an iPhone is. It takes a small army of workers, skilled, fast, and extremely precise, to put one together. Multiply those wages across thousands of workers, and suddenly, your shiny new phone isn't so affordable anymore. Supply chain headaches. It's not just labor. Apple has spent decades building a supply chain in Asia that's fast, efficient, and incredibly cheap. That includes everything from microchips to camera modules, many of which are made just a few miles from final assembly plants in China. Bringing that entire ecosystem to the US would be like uprooting a forest and trying to replant it on the moon. You're talking about years of construction, billions in infrastructure, and tons of trial and error. And even if Apple started building iPhones in the US, they'd still need to import many of those parts from overseas, at least for the foreseeable future. That means more delays, higher shipping costs, and the potential for massive supply chain disruptions. Is the sticker shock worth it? So here's the big question. Would Americans really be willing to pay 2 or 3 times more just to have their iPhone say made in the USA? Would you? For some, it's a matter of principle. For others, practicality and price win the day. It's a debate that touches on more than just technology. It's about jobs, global trade, national pride, and the cost of convenience. And it's just getting started. Why moving iPhone production isn't as easy as flipping a switch. It's easy to say, let's just make iPhones in America. But the reality? It's a whole lot more complicated and expensive. At the heart of the issue are two big obstacles: labor costs and supply chain complexity. Higher wages, higher costs. First, let's talk labor. Workers in the US earn significantly more than workers in China, and that's a good thing. Fair wages and labor protections matter. But in manufacturing, every dollar counts. According to Bank of America, just labor alone would increase the cost of producing an iPhone by 25%. And that's before you even factor in materials, facilities, or logistics. Here's the challenge. iPhones aren't made by a few machines humming quietly in a corner. They're built by thousands of skilled hands, people who assemble tiny parts with near-perfect precision. If you multiply American wages across thousands of workers and millions of phones, the math starts to get a little painful. The supply chain web, built over decades. Now let's talk supply chain. Apple didn't build its manufacturing network in China overnight. It took 30 years of fine-tuning, building relationships, training partners, and creating an ultra-efficient system that now stretches across Asia. Dan Ives, the tech analyst from Wedbush Securities, says that moving even 10% of Apple's supply chain to the US would take at least 3 years and cost around $30 billion. And that's just a fraction of the full operation. Why so difficult? Because making an iPhone involves hundreds of components: processors, camera lenses, sensors, batteries, all produced by dozens of different suppliers, many located within a few hours of Apple's main assembly hubs in China. To shift all that to the US, Apple would have to rebuild a supply chain from the ground up. That means building new factories, training a new workforce, and hoping that all the parts show up where and when they're needed. Spoiler alert, that's a huge gamble. Still relying on China. Even if Apple were to build a shiny new iPhone assembly plant in, say, Texas or Ohio, most of the parts would still come from China or other parts of Asia for years, maybe even decades. So very thing would still be tied to the very system Trudeau is trying to replace, but now with higher costs and slower turnaround times. Let us know your thoughts. Would you be willing to pay $3,000 for a US-made iPhone?